Hey everyone, welcome to today's video where we're going to continue to talk about NIO stock. There's a lot of positive momentum in terms of delivery numbers. We can see that the Onvo L90 still weeks after start of sale is continuing to bring in interest and potential customers across NIO's entire sales force, across the entire country of China. We can also see that kind of additional interest in the L90 trickles down to the cheaper, less known car, the Onvo L60, their first model, which was launched maybe end of August or early September of last year. Additionally, the launch of the new ES8 from NIO is quite interesting. There's also quite a lot of interest in that car, so we can see that both ES8 in terms of the main NIO premium brand and also L90 in the, let's say, lesser known Onvo brand, sub-brand, is doing quite great. The component price still continues to kind of go up. Let's see how far up it's gonna go, but currently, again, always when you zoom out over the chart for the past 5 years, it's still, I would say, a blip on the radar. Maybe recently it's starting to become a slightly thing more than just a blip on the radar, but still very in the grander scheme of things, not a huge difference. Going also quickly to the new NIO swap information, you can see that on Friday, so just a few days ago, they managed to do around 107,000 swaps a day. Remember, this is not one of the big holidays. Sometimes when we see across the holidays in China, there's a huge uptake in daily swaps on average. But currently we can see that just in a normal Friday, they get almost 110,000, and this is as a result of the continuous, quite sustained high sales, I would say. Obviously, I would say the sales are not to the level that maybe a lot of the bulls were expecting early this year. Like if you go here, on the row 5 and row 6, I've written down, for example, the hopium levels that we had, including myself and also a lot of people on Twitter. We can see that most of us expected to essentially already in March to break around 32,000 deliveries. That is something that's going to be done now, most likely in August. So it's like half a year delay. But in the grander scheme, I would say still it's going in the right direction. Remember that even with my expected delivery numbers, let's say 32,000 in August, then increasing to 37, 38, 38, and finally finishing with a strong December, best December of all time at 45,000. NIO is gonna just land around 325,000 deliveries for 2025. That is still almost just below 50% year-over-year increase. Let's say 45% year-over-year increase. I would say that if you would ask any other car manufacturer outside China if they would be happy with a 45% year-over-year increase on top of already, let's say, 30-35% the year prior to that, I think everyone would bite off your hand. But because we are competing against the likes of Xpeng that are, at least in terms of delivery numbers, doing better than even NIO, it maybe kind of doesn't look that great compared to some of the absolute best case. But again, compared it to Tesla, I mean, Tesla has stagnated. They've done 1.6 to 1.8 million for the past couple of years, even 3 years, and they're not gonna do any better this year, essentially. In addition to that, I mean, look at this picture. I find this hilarious. Tesla is, in my opinion, Tesla's automotive brand is in a deep waters. This whole new Model Y longer wheelbase. Honestly, what is this Frankenstein? Who would even dare to sit in a seat position in that kind of car? If you want 3 rows, maybe you should look at the, let's say, the ES8, right? The new ES8. I think that car is a complete different. Under no circumstance would I buy the, let's say, Model Y long wheelbase in China ahead of, let's say, the ES8. I guess the ES8 is slightly more expensive, but anyways, there's also additional features in the ES8 that let's say the Tesla car simply cannot even match. I've been quite critical of the management. I'm still gonna be, due to the simple fact that I think they have wasted a lot of resources, and there is a reason why the stock has been struggling over the past 3 years. Let's not pretend that it's a short attack. I mean, there's a reason a company attracts shorts, right? So going back to when I think NIO will be profitable. So, and everything is based on obviously the revenue in the green. You can see currently we have the Q1 numbers. We're gonna have the Q2 numbers, in a week or two. And I would say the most important there is that the cost of sales is continuing to not go up as much as the revenue. I mean, this is the easiest way to visualize this. You have the green is the revenue, and essentially you take the average sales price times the number of cars sold. And I believe that NIO is going to sell around 90,000 cars in Q3. which is, I would say, I mean, it's all-time high for sure, as you can see on the graph. Maybe some of you have expected 100,000, but I would say I wait with 100,000 delivery numbers to maybe Q4 of this year. So 90,000 still, in my opinion, is quite, a challenge, but very like possible challenge. How do I arrive at the number? We can see that in July, we should have 21,000 already. I mean, this is written in stone. They already done that. August, I would say maybe 32,000 is very realistic. And September, hopefully they build on the success of August and do like 37 in September, and that would give us around 90,000. So based on that kind of momentum, we can also see that the operating expenditure, so SG&A and mostly R&D, the main two components of that kind of line, you can see that SG&A is stagnating a little bit, and that is really good. To me, it seems like the management has finally understood the assignment, and I really, really welcome this kind of change in which the operating expenditure is completely stagnating, and that kind of stagnation, together with control over cost of sales, leads to a much faster increase of gross profit. And we can see that the most important line here, obviously the net loss, you can see in the red that it's been below the zero number, but the worst part was probably Q4 and Q1 of this year, and Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year. And then you can see that we already have essentially estimates for Q2, which we'll get in a couple of weeks. My estimates is around 600 million or so, even 700 million. I mean, it wouldn't be great, but at least we are moving again in the right direction. But based on the 90,000 deliveries in Q3, I'd expect that, NIO will arrive at around less than $500 million of net loss, and maybe even in Q4 come at 300. Now, I know that the management is really pushing hard about become profitable already by Q4 of this year. I'll say, see that as a bonus. There's potentially a few levers, for example, the carbon emission and any benefits that they can get, the same way that, Tesla gets selling credits to other car manufacturers that are not, achieving this kind of full fleet carbon emission. So, for example, if you're Ford and your fleet across the entire year, you're essentially emitting too much greenhouse gases through like carbon emissions. Your fleet is simply not fully electrified to the degree that is required according to the law. So then they have to pay a penalty, and the only way like they can get around that is to pay Tesla, that is have kind of a huge amount of credit in that regard, because they're only selling electric cars, and then they get some, a few hundred millions, maybe sometimes even $500 million every single quarter. If some of you suggested that NIO can potentially achieve something similar, then for sure, I would say like it's potential that on a one-off quarter, like in Q4 of this year, they might get very, very close to break even, or even, potentially making a very, very slight profit. But I wouldn't say, I don't care about, one single quarter or so. I would say, now let's be honest with ourselves, right? Doesn't mean that this is the best time to invest in the company as we speak right now in the up and coming weeks. Why do I say that? Well, I have a gut feeling, and based on, the numbers and the amount of cash that the company currently has, my feeling is that another dilution is not out of the play. Now, this is pure speculation. I'm not 100% sure, but I would say, like, I'm not saying that this company will do another kind of capital raise, but I wouldn't like put it out of play currently with the cash position that they have, and it's quite a small position in my opinion. So it's potential that the company, will raise a few hundred millions, maybe let's say 300-400 million. That would be some certain amount of dilution. Maybe the stock reacts negatively. So in my opinion, I would at least wait to the earnings, in a couple of weeks. Let's see what they say. Look at the guidance for Q3 and how much can they actually double down on terms of profitability in Q4 and also for 2026. I get there's a lot of question coming from that direction, and then maybe I would still, after that, start to look at NIO again in terms of maybe worth investing more. Even if the stock goes to $8, I mean, even at $8, this company is like dirt cheap in terms of market capitalization, if they finally are moving in the right direction, right? So I'd much rather like take the risk of, the stock runs up to 8 or even 9, lose a little bit of a profit, but at least know for sure that the company is moving in the right direction, than the other way around, like starting to, getting huge position again in this company, and then get disappointment like in 2 or 3 weeks time, maybe 4 or 5 weeks time, and the momentum of the L90 starts to taper off and there's a lot of negativity, and let's say, I don't know, the company decides to raise a little bit of a capital, and then we're back to square one at like $4, $5, $6 US. So I'd say I'd much rather in that case be wrong, wait to see like final confirmation from the company, like how is the Q2 earnings looking, how is the Q3 guidance looking, what are the future projections for 2026, right? Then decide again if I'm gonna take up even a larger position in company like NIO. So that's probably my, the most down to earth take on NIO. I say like there is absolutely no denying, and this we've been in this scenario with NIO on multiple occasions over the past 2 or 3 years. But there's absolutely no denying that fundamentally, as things stand right now, it's starting again to look okay. I mean, starting to look bright, right? It's just a question of like how much will the management finally start to, not only like for end of this year, but actually for every single year ahead, like every single quarter, every single year, try to maximize the profits to a sane amount of, in a way that the investor community is satisfied with this company and the management. If they do that, like if they I mean, sure, by all means you can spend a lot of money on R&D, and NIO has to spend a lot of money on R&D compared to the likes of Xpeng, because the battery swap infrastructure and the sheer amount of different brands and models that they have, like what, 10 to 15 different models across all three brands, right? So at some point it's fully realistic that they have to spend more on R&D budget and sales. I understand that. But at least, let's try to make that balance much more even than they have done over the past, let's say, I don't know, like 3 years, right? I believe this is part of the reason why the stock has been absolutely destroyed over the past 3 years, to the point that like a whole generation of investors have lost like almost half of a decade of investment and opportunity, right? And imagine like if you stood on NIO as some of us has done over the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, just think about the amount of alternative costs, like opportunity cost, the amount of stocks out there that in this, like let's say since 2021, at the very least doubled or tripled, like especially us like that are investing in risky stocks, right? I mean, you can easily find 10 stocks that have done like 5 to 10x over that same span of timeline, and that's a huge amount of opportunity cost. So let's not forget that, right? So let's not forgive the management for all the wrongs that they have done, but as things stand now, just from pure neutral perspective, I think it's moving in the right direction again. So anyways, please like and subscribe, comment in the comment section. Thanks for your time, and see you in the next